All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. First and foremost, thank you guys for all the support, all the love, all the shares, all the likes, and etc. I truly appreciate all that you guys are doing and following the Resilient Voices and Beyond podcast, but also not just supporting me, but supporting the guests who've been on here in whatever fashion that may be. I'm pretty sure that all of them are appreciative, and I'm going to send a special thanks on behalf of them as well. As we get into today's episode, this is season 3, episode 9. Um, my name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. If you have made it this far and you don't know who I am, that's okay. Because I'm gonna introduce myself. I've spent 11 years within the Michigan child welfare system, part of that being on the juvenile side, the last half of that being in the foster care side of things. I've worked within child welfare and advocacy for a little bit over 11 years, working as a youth care worker, doing internships, advocating across this nation, and more. So, been around the block, but you guys aren't here for me. Um, as much as I would like to think so, but no, you guys are here to hear from my guests. So, without further ado, I'm gonna have her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isabel Rodriguez. I spent about just over 7 years in the Michigan foster care system, kind of similar to Michael. Michael and I met through our advocacy work in the state of Michigan, and I've been on the podcast before, so I'm returning. I'm back, ready to talk again about a lot of the advocacy work that I've been doing. So a little bit about me. I entered foster care around age 13. And then I just aged out of foster care 3 days ago. And during my time, I've done a lot of advocacy work. I have a lot of story behind that. But most recently, I worked with the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute. And as part of that, I published a policy report titled "What If Our Letters Were Right?" which focuses on sibling separation, enlightening with a little bit of my story and sharing a lot of the experiences overall and the impact that sibling separation has on youth and foster care. I also had the honor of working for the United States Senate over the summer, and I'm currently a candidate for the Masters of Public Administration program at Western Michigan University, a former undergraduate from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, with distinction. So excited to be here, ready to get going. And Michael, let's get this started again.
Awesome. First and foremost, this is not gonna be your not so typical podcast. We here to talk and catch up and conversate and kind of bounce off of the episode we did. And I believe that was that season 2 we recorded.
Michael, it's been so long. It might have been season 1. Y'all go back, listen to all the podcasts. You'll find it.
Definitely. See, if you go start at 1 and listen to all of them, you would get there. So that definitely is a chime in to listen to the podcast, listen from season 1, and tell me guys what you think. I really appreciate feedback as well. So you've been doing a lot of work, a lot of advocacy. Can I before we get into the meat of like what you have just recently done, I want to ask this question, and I think I asked it in our past recording. Why do you continue to do advocacy after you have experienced what you advocate about?
Yeah, we have talked about this a little bit, both I think a little bit in the last podcast I did, which I know is titled "Something to Live For, Something to Die For." So you listeners out there, if you want a little easier sneak peek at it, you could probably find it by searching that up. But yeah, Michael, I think going back to that question of like, why am I still doing advocacy, especially while being in the system, right? Like I just aged out 2 days ago from extended foster care. And so part of the reason why I still do it is my struggles have still not stopped. You know, I joined extended foster care. I had so many struggles with the system, with working with them, with making sure that I myself was stable, wasn't homeless, was able to find networks, communities, feel like I belonged, had some kind of permanent stability in my life. And what I realized around age 16, so years ago, was that I found my sense of purpose and belonging with my community, with people who are struggling just like me. But more so, I found it in that I knew I was gifted with certain abilities, certain things that other people didn't have access to or weren't able to use and amplify in the same way. And part of that was my ability to publicly speak, the access that I had to obtain a higher education, these kind of resources that I had access to. And for me, it was all about, if I have access to it and there are so many people that don't, I have to use it to create something better. I have to use it to uplift voices that aren't sitting at the table with me. If I'm at that table, what am I doing if I'm not advocating and amplifying the voices of those who aren't there? What am I doing if I'm not building a table that has chairs for them to be at as well? If I'm already there, that is my purpose. That's what I'm there for, right? And so that's part of it. But another part of it was a big impact on my life was being separated from my siblings in foster care. And so I talk about that in my policy report. I'm really vocal about it in my advocacy work within the state and at a national level. And I know I'm not alone in that struggle. Over 400,000 kids are separated from their siblings at any point in foster care. And so part of that was amplifying those voices, telling those stories, and trying to get that change. But also I have 2 siblings that were in foster care with me, and all of our lives look drastically different. And for one of those siblings, I no longer have a relationship, right? And actually just 10 months ago, probably, last November, about 2 days before Thanksgiving, I ran into one of my siblings. And I wrote about this a little bit. I spoke about this at a congressional briefing as well, but I hadn't seen that sibling in over 6 or 7 years. And we didn't have a relationship. And, running into them and meeting them, I could clearly see, not only within myself, I could feel the trauma and the impact that had on me. And it brought up a lot of unhealed parts of me, but I saw it in them. I saw a little kid who literally said, like, I won't call anyone family. I won't say I love you to anyone because everyone just leaves. And for me, like, that being a kid that I helped raise, that I took care of, that I still do. I loved as a kid. I love to this day, but they don't feel like they can reciprocate that back. And that for me was more driving, and that I was like, kids are being destroyed. Their livelihoods are being taken from them. Their ability to develop long-term relationships with people, not just their siblings. I mean, siblings, my gosh, is probably the most heartbreaking, being that those are the longest relationships of anybody's life, typically. And so, but it's having this long-term effect on kids. And so my advocacy is driven by that. But also it's just in short, a process for healing myself and healing others.
Definitely. Wow, I appreciate you sharing that. I have a secondary question following that, if you don't mind. I know we talked about this as well. And you, I want to say you were getting ready to graduate or had graduated, and so forth. But what how important has mental health continued to play, mental health and self-care played a part in this continuous journey of advocacy and work within this realm for you, especially as you mentioned, still processing and dealing with, things as you have been advocating with siblings, and stuff like that. And I know for myself, reason I asked this question, um, is I know for myself, life doesn't stop. Just because I'm advocating and uplifting, other voices on this podcast, there has been many times, where just being completely transparent with you and with the audience listening, where someone has passed away close to me, where I have lost a mentee due to what I call quote unquote side effects of the system. In the midst of recording, in the midst of advocating, in the midst of being on a panel, and I've had to balance and work through some of these things. So I'm interested to hear, how has this continued to play a role in your life as you have navigated growing, healing, relationships, work, education, and more?
Oh man, let me tell you. I mean, I know so, but it's life doesn't stop. It really doesn't, just like you said. And I think, we've talked about this before, and we talked about this a little bit on the previous episode we did together, but healing is a journey, and in my perspective, it never ends. Like, you should never, there's never a point when you are healed and everything's great and there's nothing that you need to keep working on. And so understanding that has helped me a lot, in that there are times when I encounter something, and I'm like, whoa, that just brought up a lot of different things in me, whether that's an emotional reaction, or I'm shutting down, or I'm pulling away, or I'm responding to people that I love, that I care about, in ways that they don't necessarily deserve, or that isn't an accurate reflection of who I am as a person. And so just understanding that healing is a journey. And there are times when, for the longest time, I thought I had healed a part of me. When I first realized about 4 years in foster care that I probably would never see my sibling again, I had to grieve that. About 2 years in, I was like, what the heck's going on? Why am I not seeing my sibling? Why are we not allowed visitations? The court has said we can't have them. What is preventing this from happening? I couldn't understand, but I had so much hope, right? I was still holding on to that. And about 4 years in, I felt it kind of fading. I felt like it's never going to happen. I don't know who they are. I don't know where they are. I don't know what their life looks like. I couldn't tell you if at that point they were in foster care, or they were adopted, or, I didn't know. And I started feeling like, wow, I lost someone. And interestingly enough, it felt like the end all be all loss, right? It felt like someone had passed away. Like I would literally lost out on something. And even more, it wasn't just the person, but you go through this process of grieving that relationship that you had with that person. And so for a long time, I went through grieving. And a while after that, I was like, wow, I think I'm healed. I got to a point where I could talk about it a little bit more. I could tell people about who my sibling was, things that we did together. I could tell them about when I aged out at 18, 19 from just normal mandatory foster care, when I aged out from that. And as I was deciding to go into extended foster care, I was given a box of letters that I had both written to my sibling and that they had written to me. And no one ever gave them to us. I was given a box of them when I aged out of mandatory care, because people failed to give us letters. And these were, hand-drawn birthday cards saying nothing more than happy birthday. We're the Rodriguezes. No one can take that away. We're family. Like, I love you. That's what they'd say, and no one would deliver them. And so I grieved that for the longest time. And at some point, I got to the point where I could talk about it, where I could say my sibling's name and not cry and not feel that kind of thing. But then, when we're thinking about healing, I thought, I was like, wow, I'm healed. I've grieved it. I'm past it. Like, I can live my life fully now. And then November came, and I ran into my sibling, and I was like, whoa, it brought it all back up. And so a big thing that has helped me in this is just framing healing as a journey, because I know it's that. I thought I was healed. I know I'm not. I'm still working on it. And I also want another important point here, Michael, is that, you know, we're doing the work that we wish other people had done for us, right? We were not supported in the ways that we envision the system doing for others, right? We want to make that change. And so you're advocating for what you're living through, what you're watching your peers live through, what you're watching your mentors, your mentees, people you care about go through, and you're advocating for that to stop, or for somehow it to change and become better. And so mental health is just, it is tough. I mean, we see kids in juvenile facilities and in those types of homes, you know, we see them their lives be taken because of the way that rules are structured or the way that they're treated in those facilities. And so it's a journey, obviously. And I think that has been framing it that way, understanding that, and being okay with being setbacks, not being the end all be all, has been definitely a huge help in that area.
Wow, yeah, man. I appreciate you uplifting that, you know, that it's a journey, you know, and it's not something, you know, going off of what you said, it's not something, you know, you should rush through, to be honest. Um, go at your own pace, especially if you are listening and you are advocates yourself, you know. It's easy to look at what someone else is doing and be like, oh, they're going this way, you know, this is what they're doing, you know, I need to, you know, get there, or I need to, you know, and I'm saying this because I've done it.
Oh man, Michael, we
You
all
know,
do it.
I have done it, you know, been there, done that, you know, and I realized I can't put myself towards the same speed, the same pace as other people. I know I've mentioned this before, like I've operated through college, through this podcast, and many other advocacy opportunities, and I like can't type fast. And I try my best, you know, for years. I was like, dang, I need to do this. And I would try to push myself to limits and stuff like that. But that wasn't realistically that my personal capacity was not fit for that, you know. And I had to find what works for me. And I want to share with you guys, like, find what works for you in your healing journey, in your recovery journey, or even if it's not anything that you're necessarily healing in this moment or what have you, but just in the aspect of mental health and maintaining, you know, a healthy mental a healthy mental health balance, you know, emotionally, physically, and more. Find what works for you. You know, if that's sipping tea, do that. You know, if that's yoga, do that. You know, but do not try to compare and contrast. Do not try to match, you know, the next person's speed. You know, and that's what really, you know, when you said that, that's what kind of spoke to me. But also, you know, that's my advocacy in a T, that, you know, I speak on what I've been through, what I do, and what I'm currently going through. You know, I think in the early season one, I talked about being in this journey of homelessness, and advocating through my homelessness, going to DC, advocating, sitting on panels, advocating, still working and healing, you know, throughout that, but also speaking to the truth of my own experience. And the biggest thing I've realized by doing that is, like, yes, I'm going through this currently, but I know that even if I don't know that person personally, I know there's somebody else that's going through the same thing, but they're not in the place to vocalize it. So definitely, I agree to that. Um, I want to segue a little bit, because you brought it up earlier. You talked about being a part of the coalition, and having that experience, and doing that. Talk to me a little about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but I had the privilege to work with the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute based in DC, through their foster youth internship program. It's a great program. And it supported 12 foster youth this previous year. And what it does is it allows any youth with experience in foster care who, they have some college experience behind them. They're able to produce a congressional policy report based on extensive research, but also incorporating their own voice into that. And so, I applied for that program. I started the application about last September and submitted it by mid-November, end of November. And, I applied for it and I did research. I had been doing research while in my undergraduate program at the University of Michigan. I'd been doing research on the impact of lived experiences in foster care and before that. So, like the experiences that maybe led to you being placed in foster care or whatever was a formative experience for somebody. And then, the same thing while they're in foster care. And I was looking at foster youth, those lived experiences, and how that impacted educational outcomes at prestigious institutions like U of M. And something that I noticed was it was really common for people to be separated from their siblings. And this is something I shared. Obviously, it had a huge impact on me. And I was working through it for the longest time. And again, like I said, I thought I had healed from that. And so I applied to CCAI, writing a research paper on sibling separation and kind of the impact that it has on a youth's development. And about a week after I submitted my application, I ran into my sibling that I thought, I was like, I healed this relationship. And then I ran into them after I'm just like, I applied, submitted this research paper and was like, hey, CCAI, I'm going to write about this topic. And then I ran into my sibling. I was like, whoa, what if I get it? Am I ready to talk about this now? Because the healing process started from point A again. As soon as I ran into them and we talked and we, I was told I can't call you my sister, like exact words. And, that broke a part of me because I was like, well, I'm still going to call you my brother. And I couldn't say that because I wanted to respect their views. Right. And where they were at in their healing journey. And so again, like you said, Michael, it was recognizing we're not at the same place in our healing journey. And we probably will never be. And it was kind of a closure moment, but, I did the interview process, all that jazz with CCAI, got offered the opportunity, was so excited for it, ready to go. So I went out there, went to DC. Well, first, before I went to DC, actually, I started working on the research report. Again, like I said, it's really extensive. So all of us are putting time, effort, emotion, our mental space into these works, into these pieces that we ultimately published in a huge congressional policy report, right? And so I started that while I was still finishing my undergraduate degree. I was taking all my finals, finishing up, going through graduations, had all this stuff going on, and matriculating to grad school, all of that at the same time that I'm starting this report. Ended up going out there with some progress made on it. And we spent about 9 weeks out there. And it was rough. You're working in a space, we're all covering kind of different topics about the child welfare system, from access to higher education to kinship care, to adoption, to legal services, to mental health care, what should be provided, what's not, how can we get better? And then of course my topic, sibling separation, was one of them as well. And so it was rough, to say the least. It was rough for me because I am still healing. Right now I'm actively searching for a new therapist. I'm ready to begin my therapy journey again and work through some of this because it brought up a lot. And it made me aware of a lot more about myself and about where I'm at and about the journeys of other people. But yeah, that's a kind of a little bit about that. And at the same time that I was writing that report, I was interning for the US Senate. And actually a great accomplishment from that is There has been legislation in the House of Representatives called the Protecting Sibling Relationships in Foster Care Act of 2023. It was introduced by Representative Don Bacon. And I had the honor, there was no co-legislation, which for those of you out there who don't know, in Congress and in government, you have to have legislation that passes both through the House and the Senate, right? And so a way to make that process a little bit easier or faster is to have sister or co-legislation, which is kind of identical legislation that exists on both sides. And so what we had was this act, HR 755, which I just, that's this Protecting Sibling Relationships in Foster Care Act. We had that act, right? It was introduced in the House, but nothing of that nature existed in the Senate. And so I worked with the senator that I was interning with through CCAI. It was an assigned placement. And I had the privilege of pitching that idea, helping draft the legislation, stuff like that, getting it out there, and I got it approved. It hasn't been introduced to the Senate yet, so I'm not going to release all that information, but it is getting introduced. And so that was a big accomplishment of mine, was to have literal Senate legislation, co-legislation that directly impacts the topic of foster care that I was focusing on for the entire summer, and something that I'm healing through right now.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Doing such amazing work, it's I just find it all inspiring when you continue to see, like your fellow, foster brothers and sisters, friends, colleagues, continue to do great work. Yeah, I feel like I've been around the block a few times, even though in my short 26 years of life, I know somebody in the audience is probably like, you still young. What are you talking about? I feel like I'd be like 50 and 40. So just bear with me.
Listen, I just had a birthday and I'm already feeling the same way, Michael. Listen, been around the block you too many times, I think.
Definitely. And speaking of such, you mentioned recently aging out of Michigan extended foster care. What does that mean for you? What are your thoughts surrounding this? Like, I know you've been out here, trudging on your own for a little bit, but it's something about some of these things, the programs, when I think of like aging out of MYY, aging out of different things that we have been a part of for so long, it changes or it has some kind of impact. So what does that look like for you?
Wow. I mean, you said it, it's not new to me to be trudging kind of on my own, to be almost in survival mode all the time. And it's almost impossible to shut that off and to live just like a normal person. But you're not wrong in that there's something about the experience of aging out of even extended care that it's really hard to describe. I will say, it's been talked about quite a few times in like the child welfare area and advocacy work, but when birthdays come around, when holidays come around, it's really hard on youth often. They miss their family, or they feel incomplete and not people, they're missing something. And let me tell you, this last birthday marked a big birthday for any average individual. You can rent a car, you can do all these different things, right? And not once was I excited about my birthday. I wasn't really happy about it. I wasn't planning anything. I had several people in my life asking like, oh, what are you doing for your birthday? It's such a big birthday. And I was like, nothing. And they were like, oh, you should do something. And I didn't necessarily get to the point where I could talk to them about like, why am I doing nothing? Why am I not feeling excited about this birthday? I can go to casinos. None of that was crossing my mind. But what was crossing my mind is that that's the age you lose all these resources. In Michigan, you get kind of living stipends to help support the cost of living. They're not that significant, especially in comparison to inflation and the current cost of living and just like getting by. These don't cover rent in a month, right? Collectively. And so losing that and knowing that a lot of youth who hit this age and age out end up homeless. And at some point before they turn 26, will be homeless again. And so for me, in my mind, I was like, what if that's my story, you know? And so it wasn't exciting as much as I was terrified. You know, I'm still nervous. I'm still experiencing that. I'm 3 days in and I'm like, I'm successful in the eyes of a lot of people. I've done a lot of work, but you know, these are the challenges that I'm facing. And so not just that, but I lost a lot of resources. And I think I have to grieve a part of my identity. And that, you know, I'm like, I'm a foster youth. And now it's like, I'm a former foster youth. But that experience is so real to me, you know, like I'm still experiencing what foster youth who age out experience. And so to say former almost is like saying that no longer is part of who I am. And so, yeah, I'll just say I'm grieving part of myself. I'm going through that experience, and it's hard to be in this situation and not, you know, I didn't have anyone like reach out and be like, happy birthday, other than like a very few select people. And it's just hard in those situations. But yeah, it's fresh. I'm still processing it. It's hard to put it all to words and answer the question really directly, but that's just some of the thoughts that kind of go through, I think, a lot of our heads when we're at that point and when we lose access to a lot of things that are just barely supporting us in the first place.
Definitely, definitely. I there's a couple things there. I definitely could not agree more. Um, Man, you touched on a couple things that it hit close to home. You know, I was that person preparing to age out, getting evicted, being homeless. You know, and there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle that talked about that, but then okay, ended up homeless, then ended up homeless once more before experiencing 26, you know. So it's not easy. It is a constant journey, but also you talked about, you know, holidays and your birthday. Um and full transparency to you guys, you know, for me, I find my birthday foreign. You know, I find holidays foreign too. Like it's hard because there's so much tradition I see other people have surround around these things when it was just a normal day for me, because most of those holidays, most of those birthdays where you get a cake, you get candles, you know, it's this big thing. I spent it in a place where it wasn't. um so to come up and be my own adult, and now I'm responsible of trying to do something for myself or bring those traditions, you know, most times I don't do much, you know, or don't know how, or there's so many thoughts rolling through my head. And I know I'm not the only one that go through this. So I'm sharing this in hopes that, you know, someone else feels okay to share with their people, their village. But a lot of times when these holidays or my birthday comes around, there's so many different ideas and thoughts that rolls through my head about, oh, I could do this, I could do that. It just becomes very overwhelming, you know, and I tend to not do nothing because it's so hard to pick what that ideal thing to do because I've missed so much. Um, so yeah, wanted to share that, you know, because that's what, you know, it came to in my mind as you were sharing about that. So I'm here for you in that, you know, and I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that. As we get ready to end this episode, um, have just a few more questions, few more things, you know, for you. And before I ask my two last, what's next for you? You've embarked on a new journey. You know, you kind of chimed in and shared little pieces of what you plan to do with your healing, you know. But what's next for you? What do you aspire in these next upcoming years of your life?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that because I'm working on it right now. I'm starting it right now, but you know, I just started a master's program. It's at a different institution. It's really small. And I'm just trying to figure that out, get comfortable with that. You know, I went to U of M, huge institution, really rigorous, really difficult to get into, huge sports community, all that stuff, a lot of opportunity there. And so I'm kind of adjusting from that. I loved it there. So that adjustment is not a horrible thing, but I'm struggling. But yeah, I'm starting my master's program in public administration. I'm really excited about it. It's directly tied to my hopes to remain in policy that focuses on child welfare or on human rights, uplifting voices, working with young people, giving back to communities that are being impacted in not the best ways, right? And so that's part of it, but also I got to start this healing journey again. I got to get it kicked off. I got to find what's going to work for me. The past year was really rough. I was told by a therapist a year ago that I wasn't ready for therapy, even though I had been in therapy for about 10 years before that. And suddenly, for some reason, after 10 years, I wasn't ready. And so I had to heal or process that in my relationship with seeking help like that. And so that's another part of where I'm at. But also I'm newly engaged. I'm really excited. I've been with my partner for about 5 years now. And so we're really excited about that. Their family is super excited about it as well. And so I'm embarking on that journey. And kind of, I think overall this year is going to be dedicated to really focusing on my healing journey and getting somewhere where I'm ready to take on my envisions of what my life will look like and what my career will be dedicated to.
Wow. I wish you all the best and congratulations. Happy birthday. Merry Christmas, the whole 9 yards.
Listen, I've lived 10 lives in the past month, let me tell you.
Right. No, but you have been going at it hard. And I've watched you as we've done panels together, as we've grown together,
Literally,
I've watched you continue to be resilient, continue to persevere through adversity. And although I knew very few of what you may have been going to in a more intimate and deep level, I felt it, I understood it, and I just want you to know, I'm proud of you. Thank you for doing this work. On behalf of our, foster brothers and sisters out there, on behalf of this community, and this arena of work, I'm gonna give you your flowers now because I know you're not done and I know you're not finished, and you have a lot more ahead of you. So thank you for your sacrifice, because it's a part of you that you give away to it. But also thank you for doing all that you do and being who you are while doing it.
No, man. You know what you just said that hits home is you said thank you for your sacrifice. And I think we all, a lot of times in this work, we forget how much not only that kids in care have already given up, right? They've lost so much, they've already sacrificed it, whether they chose to or not, whether it was taken or not. But those of us in advocacy work, even especially you, Michael, I could say all the same things for you that you just said for me, right? But give you your flowers now. And thank you for your sacrifice. Because we're giving up so much in this work. We're giving up part of ourselves. We're giving up part of our lives, our time, our emotions, our mental space, all that kind of stuff, to make this work happen, to do this change. And I don't want that to go unnoticed on your part either, because I see you doing it and I know it's not easy to do this work. But yeah, thank you for all of that.
No problem. No problem. I appreciate you. Lastly, as we get ready to end, what advice would you like to leave here today?
Man, that's the hardest question, right? We got a life full of advice. I got it going, but I think some advice that I really need right now, that I think others could maybe benefit from too, is just, you said it earlier. Michael, you were talking about you have to You have to stop comparing yourself to others. You have to stop kind of thinking like you're less or you're not where you want to be based on where others are, right? And I think I know you said you do it, but listen, I do it too. I think we all have a tendency to do it. I encountered people I worked with this summer in the internship program who they couldn't not do that, right? And we're in a space of advocates who brand new to the space. Some of us were like myself, we're not brand new to the space. I have a lot of experience in advocacy. And so it was really hard to compare where you're at in your journey and where others are at. And so I think a piece of advice that I'd love for all the audience out there to take away from this, and that, you know, I'm going to try and take away myself, maybe write it down and carry it around with me or something as a reminder, but just to pause, reflect on you. And when you're in those moments of, man, I want to be somewhere else, just, I think taking a look back at where you've been and keeping that focus on yourself entirely, and which can be so hard to do, and for people like us who are dedicated to serving a community, to serving others, right? But make that moment just about you, and reflect on where you've been, where you're at, and see that progress, right? See how much progress you've made and keep those goals going, right? You want to be somewhere next, but don't think you haven't made progress or you're not going anywhere, you're not successful, you're not enough, or you're not worthy, based on where others are, right? Because they have a whole journey that they're at and you might not see the full story. And in fact, you never do. And so I think that's the big piece of advice that I want people to take from this. Also, get out there, get invested in whatever communities you care about. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm assuming it's going to be the child welfare community as part of the many communities that you're passionate about and that you want to be invested in. So go out there, read my report, find me on LinkedIn, find all those reports, follow Michael on every single platform. Michael, just list them because I couldn't. You have them all. But yeah, just stay invested, pause, reflect on yourself.
Thank you so much for being a part, coming on to do another episode. Please know that this space is open to you whenever you want to have a conversation with us. So there may, I'm gonna put it out there, maybe episode 3.
Who knows, right?
Maybe
coming to you soon, maybe not soon. We'll have it.
Yeah. But well, before I forget, because I do not want to overstep here, how can people connect? How can people see what you're doing? I know you have ideas that may come out in the future or what have you, but any last comments or what have you?
Absolutely. People definitely, you can connect with me, follow me on LinkedIn, Isabel Rodriguez, distinguished graduate from U of M. Follow some of my work. A lot of it's focused in the child welfare space. That's a huge platform. I'm probably going to be most active there. But you can also read my reports there. And if you don't have LinkedIn or aren't available that way, you can definitely find me in the Congressional Policy Report that was released by the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute this year, 2023, for the Foster Youth Internship 2023 program. That's a huge amount of work that I've done. Also follow the Imprint News. They are uplifting the voices of young people. They've been in the child welfare space for a long time, but specifically they're currently, they have a series coming out where they focus on each of the policy recommendations released by the participants from the FYI program with CCAI, and mine is one of those. So those are just a couple ways that people can stay connected and follow the work that I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, I just appreciate you taking out your time, your vulnerability, and sharing with us. As I get ready to close out this episode 9 of season 3 of Resilient Voices and Beyond. Believe it or not, I did not know this because I'm horrible at keeping track of time in my own episodes, apparently, which what I'm on is that I've been doing this for a little bit over 2 years. This podcast has been going over a little bit over 2 years. And it's crazy because I didn't know that. So thank you so much for being a part of this, for listening, for your love, for your prayers, for your support, everything and above. I would be remiss to say we've talked about some very heavy things and some very light things. Either way, take some time if you have been triggered or something had, came apart that you may be going through. Take some time, practice some mindfulness wherever you are, on your way to work, in your car, at home, in your living room, in your bathtub, whatever. Just take some time to center yourself, gather those thoughts. If you have something here struck a chord or what have you, and you are wondering, well, how can I find some resources? How can I start my healing journey? Find a therapist for me or what have you, and you just want support in doing that, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email is listed within my podcast bio and what have you, depending on what platform you're on. But you can look me up on Facebook, direct message me. I would love to be able to help you start that journey and find the best fit for you and whatever that looks like. I don't want anyone out there going through different things like, Izzy mentioned, sometimes we go through things and sometimes we are in it and, because we went through it, nobody else, helped us through it or what have you. So I just don't want anybody to feel alone. I don't want anyone to feel hesitant. And if I can just help you get that going for yourself, I'm more than willing to. Outside of that, it's getting towards the cold season. Please take care of yourself. COVID is still going, flu season, everything. Please take care of yourself. Be healthy out there. Be safe. I hope you guys have a good morning, good afternoon, whenever you are listening to this. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond, Season 3, Episode 9. Thank you, and with love, see you guys soon.